Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to the second episode of 36 Entrepreneur TV. Happy Podcast Friday. Every Friday, as I said in the last episode, I'm gonna be sharing podcasting tips. And today I want to share with you 9 lessons I learned after reaching the 100,000 podcast downloads. So we have quite some content to cover, so I don't want to waste any of your time. Let's dive into it. Okay, so the first lesson I learned is really about building relationships before you need them. And many people are surprised about the fact that I've interviewed people like Pat Flynn, John Lee Dumas, Kim Garst, Natalie Sisson, Brian Kramer. And sure, all those things are great. You know, they are great people and I'm honored to have had time to sit down with them and interview them. But you know what the cool thing is that, for example, Pat Flynn, Kim Garst, John Lee Dumas, Natalie Sisson, they all agree to be on my podcast before I actually had a podcast or I had a blog. And the reason why is because I had built relationships with them before. So my number one lesson is really try to build relationships before you even need them. Just be a connector, be a helper, help people, provide value, and when it's your time to ask for something, they're gonna be happy to help you back. Okay, my second lesson is about launching with a bang. And you know, I have 2 podcasts. 36 Entrepreneur is my second one. And with my first one, the Jazz Spotlight, I just thought, well, I'm just gonna launch and tweak as I go. You know, for other things you do like that. Well, that's not the case of podcasting. If you are working on a podcast, you want to launch with a bang. You want to have a strategy behind it. And that's how, that's how my podcasts have differed. The first one, I didn't know much what I was doing. I would just email friends here and there. So long story short, my podcast got lost, already new and noteworthy, and then after those 8 weeks, got lost, on iTunes. On the other hand, with the 36 Entrepreneur podcast, I managed to hit the number 1 spot on different categories of new and noteworthy, which is pretty cool. And the way I did it, I had a launch plan in mind. So do the same. If you're working on a podcast, make sure to sit down, plan your launch, and you're gonna rock iTunes. All right, my third lesson is about the mentality, the mindset. You have to remember that, like many other things in life, podcasting is no exception. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint, which means that you have to be confident, you have to be passionate, you have to be patient, most importantly, and things are gonna work out. You don't have to compare yourself with those you look up to. Sure, look at them as examples, but don't compare your numbers with theirs. Everybody starts with 1 download, with 5, 10 downloads, and so forth. And it's the same for you. Just be patient. Remember that it's a marathon and it's not a sprint, and great things are gonna happen. All right, the fourth lesson is what I called test, track, and tweak. And here, this applies not only for podcasting, but to other things as well. But since it's Podcast Friday, I'm gonna keep it related to podcasting. So there are different strategies you can use to grow your podcast. And you hear about strategies, you can test them, try them out, but remember that not everything that has worked out well for some people are gonna work out well for you. So what you want to do is try something, test it out, track, make sure that you keep track of what you're doing so you have some numbers, you see if things are working or are not working. If they aren't, just tweak here and there, tweak it. If it doesn't work, just drop it, focus and try another strategy. And you're gonna see that with time, you're gonna find a strategy or strategies that are gonna work for you and your podcast. All right, the 5th lesson, it's a reality check. When I started my first podcast, I thought, well, I'm just gonna interview very important people in the music industry, big names, the downloads are gonna come. Thousands of downloads are gonna come. They're gonna be sharing the interview, it's gonna be great. I won't have to do anything. Well, guess what? It was pretty much crickets, and here's why. There are 2 things you have to keep in mind. The first thing is that not everybody you interview is going to actually share the interview. And I know it sounds crazy, even for me I was like, what? but that's how it is. I don't know why, don't ask me why, I have no idea, but some people actually don't. I've started to be interviewed as well for other podcasts, and I'm happy to share those interviews. If I know that they provide value to my audience, they provide value to you, I'm happy to share them over and over again, but some people just don't. So that's the first thing you should keep in mind. The second thing is that people are lazy, especially when it comes to things that aren't their things. So this is your podcast, is your job to make it super easy for them to share. So I like to talk about turning my guests into marketers. And what I do is when an episode is online, I email the person, I thank him or her for being on the show, and I share the link of the post that goes along with the podcast. And then I share a few clickable tweets, so tweets that I've already crafted for them so they don't have to spend their time and actually write them. And I also attach to my email a few visuals that they can use, for example, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and has worked out well. I've seen that some of my guests actually are so nice that they still share our interview weeks or even months after we did it. So that's gonna help you. Even though you do that, some people are still not gonna share much, but that definitely gonna help increasing your guests' shares. All right, the sixth lesson is about you. It's your show, it's your rules. And this is very important because as your show grows, people are gonna start to reach out to you. They're gonna ask to be interviewed, they're gonna come with affiliate promotions, all kinds of things. But it's your show. You have to do two things. Be honest and do things that provide value and help your audience. So when it comes to getting guests, you have to know what you want and what's good for your audience. Don't be impolite. There are great ways to say no by being polite, and you have to do that because you never know. People may know people, so you don't want to have a bad reputation. But still, keep it in mind. It's your show and it's your rules. You dictate what you want and what your audience wants, and nobody else. Okay, the seventh lesson is what I called share and reshare. And when it comes especially to dynamic platforms like Twitter, you don't have to be afraid to be resharing your content. I use a tool called Social Oomph, which makes my life so much easier than it was before when it comes to resharing my evergreen content. And here you see my affiliate link. If it's something that sounds interesting, you can check it out. I think they have a free 7-day trial. I think it's an entire week. You can try it out. And basically, when it comes to podcast, sure, you should promote the newest episodes as soon as they are online, but don't forget about the old ones. And you know, with the Jazz Spotlight, for example, which is an older podcast, I've published, I think as of today, 82 episodes, if I remember correctly. And you know, on Twitter, I see people who write, you know, who send tweets like, hey, I've just found out about your podcast. I can't believe I didn't see that before. It's been over 80 episodes. So keep that in mind. There's people that are gonna be finding you 6 months after you launch, 1 year after you launch. So you want to make sure that you keep promoting the evergreen content. And that applies not only for podcasting, obviously, but even for blogging, or if you have a vlog and you use video. Okay, we are almost there. The eighth lesson I learned by passing the 100,000 download marks in podcasting is about email. Make sure that you focus on growing your email list. And it's very, very difficult, even with the podcast. A strategy you can use is what is called the content upgrade. And I like to create what I call an action guide. And it's a free download. Sometimes it's a mini ebook. It can be an infographic. It can be a video where you provide valuable information that builds on what has been discussed on the specific podcast episode. And that's great because if someone tunes in, enjoys your episode, enjoy your interview, if it's an interview-based show, you know they're gonna be interested in learning more in building on what they have learned. So if you have a content upgrade, it's gonna be great. So it's work, obviously. It's not something that you can just put whatever, but you can create something that it's relatively simple to create, but that still provides a bunch of value. So that's my tip. If you put in the work, you're gonna see that your email list is gonna start to grow thanks to your podcast. Okay, and the ninth and final lesson I've learned about podcasting after doing two podcasts combined over 120 episodes is about the money. Don't go into podcasting with the I want to make a bunch of money mentality. It's not gonna happen, I tell you right off the bat. Don't worry about the money. If you do things well, you're gonna be finding ways you can monetize with your podcast. Focus on providing value, on growing you as a person, as a host, to help your audience grow, to help them achieve their goals, to grow your email list, and the money is gonna come in. Don't worry about the money. Focus on creating quality content and helping people. Alright guys, these were the 9 lessons I've learned in my podcasting journey. Let's quickly recap them. You see here, the first one was build relationships before you need them. The second, launch with a bang, with a strategy. The third one, remember that it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. The fourth was test, track, and tweak. And then we had turn your guests into marketers. Your show, your rules, no exception. The seventh lesson was share and reshare, so don't be afraid to reshare your evergreen content if it helps people. The eighth lesson was try to find ways to grow your email list. And the ninth and final point was don't focus on the money. Alright guys, I wanted to keep it relatively short. I actually did a Periscope a few days ago where I talked about these things more in depth, and I touched on some of the things I've touched here more in depth. So if you're interested in that, you find the link here in the description below this video. I hope you find it useful. If you're struggling with something, you're a podcaster, you're struggling with something, leave me a comment. I'll be more than happy to read about your struggles and to help you overcome those obstacles. All right, this is it. Thank you so much for watching, and since it's Friday, I just want to wish you an awesome weekend. Take care.